The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
My name is Victor Tiffany. I'm with Revolt Against Plutocracy, and this is going to be a description of what we meant when we said Bernie or bust is a foregone conclusion in our Newsweek opinion piece. So I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see which one, what it is exactly we're talking about here. I'm going to try to set this up. Okay. There's our Newsweek article. Right, and you can see down here, the last thing we said in our article, Bernie or bust is a warning, ignore it and Trump wins. The last thing we said here is, unless there's a recession, Bernie or bust is a foregone conclusion. And I want to make the case. We're not reading tea leaves here. We are looking at numbers and statistics. We wouldn't say this if we weren't absolutely confident that Donald Trump will be reelected if Bernie Sanders is not the Democratic Party nominee. So what do we mean by unless there's a recession? So I'm going to go to just a paper on that subject right here in a post-war period since World War II. Incumbent presidents run for re-election 10 times, winning 7 and losing 3. The winners all had strong job markets going for them. And right now, unemployment is particularly low. So that's the unless there's a recession side of that argument. What about the foregone conclusion? Go back to 2016. This is a poll of Berners, Sanders voters in the primaries. What did they do in the general election? And you can see here that 12% voted for Trump. These are not Bernie or busters. These are Bernie or Trumpers. And we're recently discovering the impact of the Bernie or Trumpers. I'll come back to them in a moment. These are the Bernie or busters. You can see 78% or so voted for Hillary Clinton, just the way Bernie Sanders wanted them to. 8% of us or so voted for Jill Stein. He doesn't have the write-in option here, so I don't know if he folded them into this. I'll talk about them in a moment. And roughly 2, maybe 3% did not vote in the general election. So what's the upshot here between this 8% of Bernie or busters and these people, the Bernie or Trumpers? There's more of them, 50% more of them, according to this poll of 2,226 Sanders supporters. So let's come down here and look how this played out in the 3 states that Hillary Clinton had to win. Here, this is the margin of victory of Trump over Clinton in those 3 states. And these estimated Bernie or Trumpers clearly were responsible for Clinton's defeat. But no one's organizing the people. There's no Bernie or Trump website. So there was no one making the claim, yeah, we're responsible for Hillary Clinton's defeat. They just people who maybe it was revenge, getting payback for what the DNC did to Bernie Sanders. We don't know. How did Bernie or bust do? As we explain in our page 183 and 184 in our book, we could have taken the increase of votes Jill Stein got in Michigan was right about here. Between 2012 and 2016, Bernie or bust could have claimed responsibility for her loss in Michigan. Same thing with Wisconsin. Jill Stein got increased number of votes that we could have taken responsibility. But in Pennsylvania, where they counted the write-in votes, if you add those write-in votes, along with the increased number of votes Jill Stein got from 2016 compared to 2012, we fell about 9,600 votes shy here in Pennsylvania. So we did not claim responsibility for Hillary Clinton's defeat because we felt if we couldn't claim all 3, then someone could come back to us and say, no, she lost on her own or whatever. And by the way, if the Democrats who didn't vote because they didn't want Hillary Clinton and they didn't want Donald Trump, if the Democrats who stayed home had come out and voted for Trump, these Bernie or Trumpers would not have made a difference. So the Bernie or Trumpers aren't the only reason Hillary Clinton lost. She also lost because she just didn't turn on a whole bunch of Democrats. The Democrats nominated an extremely unpopular nominee. So that was then. What about now? I'm sure you're wondering. This is a poll from April of this year, Emerson College poll that we just confirmed this week. 26% of those polled, and by the way, it's only 103 supporters of Bernie Sanders currently going to vote for him in next year's primaries. 26% of them would vote for Trump over Elizabeth Warren. So that sounds like it's more than the 12% who did last time. But I'm going to come back to that number here in a moment. It's not as big as what we think. What about recently? What about a current poll? Here's one from November 12th. Look at this headline. 2/3 of Bernie supporters would also support Elizabeth Warren if she's the nominee. Sounds exciting. Yay, that's so good, except they're burying the headline, which is 1/3 of certain Bernie supporters will not vote for Elizabeth Warren if she's the party nominee. That's the headline here. I don't know what it is with these journalists. John Haltewanger, I guess, I don't know how you pronounce this, Wanger. I don't know what he was thinking. Or maybe he didn't write the headline. I don't know what Business Insider was thinking. But those are horrible numbers for Elizabeth Warren. And the Democratic Party, if you come down here, she got 2/3. Biden got less than half, right? They are very dissatisfied. Burners are very dissatisfied with Biden for good reason. There's no question if he's the nominee, Democrats are going to lose to Trump again because a lot of these people are going to vote for Donald Trump. Where's Bernie Buss sitting here? He does some polling here too. Supposedly he defines Bernie Buss as those who only going to support Bernie Sanders, which is not Bernie Buss, but it's typical for mainstream media to mess up the definition of Bernie or Bust. For your information, Bernie or Bust means voting progressive on November 3rd, 2020. That might mean Green Party, that might mean Bernie Sanders, it might mean Socialist Party. But it's not just Bernie Sanders. And when I say vote for Bernie Sanders, it means he's the Democratic Party nominee. Writing in a party, writing in a candidate who's not running as a write-in candidate is a waste. It's a protest vote, all it is. It's not an act of revolution. And we are revolutionaries. Bernie or Bust is a revolutionary progressive strategy. So our point is, these numbers haven't gone down. These people who aren't going to vote blue, no matter who. So instead of talking about Bernie or Bust, maybe we need to talk about Bernie or not blue, no matter who, right? Because it's not just Bernie or Bust. It's also the Bernie for Trumpers. But what about these percentages? So I want to make a point here. Let's just say in 2016, Bernie had 100,000. I know it was a lot more than that. Let's just say he had 100,000 supporters. 12% would be 12,000 of his supporters who voted for Trump, right? The 12% point. This time, according to polls, Bernie has less support. Some of Bernie's supporters are voting or supporting Biden until they find out more about his Senate record. Some of them are supporting Elizabeth Warren until they find out she's a full progressive, and they're slowly slipping over back to Bernie. Bernie is a lifelong progressive. He's never hoodwinked anybody. He's honest, and he's always been a progressive. My point here is this. You're looking at higher percentages, but higher percentage of a lower number of people who are telling pollsters that they're going to vote for Bernie in the primaries are still the same number of people. So this isn't necessarily indicating that more and more people are Bernie or Trump this time around. But they don't have to be more and more people voting for Trump this time around, because last time what they had was more than enough. This, right, the Bernie or Trumpers at 12% of his supporters last time was enough. So if they're still 12%, or sorry, if they're still about the same number of people, even though it's a higher percentage, it's still doomed for the Democratic Party nominee whose name is not Bernie Sanders. We're not reading tea leaves here. We're looking at very serious numbers, coming to the conclusion that Bernie or Bust is a foregone conclusion this time around. Let's talk about the Bernie or Bust generation. This is an essay contest winner that was published in the New York Times. She's 17, voting for the first time next year. This is a section of this of a paragraph. The key difference between our generation and our parents is that we belong to the Bernie or bust generation. 2016 revealed that we won't choose between the lesser of two evils. If no candidate inspires us, we will just stay home. My understanding from talking with Bernie or busters around the country through email, I don't mean talking, but what we've learned is that these are first and second time post-millennial voters who remember what the DNC did to Bernie Sanders last time around. Remember, Donna Brazile revealed in a political article that the Clinton campaign funded the DNC, controlled the DNC, and when you control the Democrat or the National Committee of a major party, you control the outcome. That's rigging the outcome. Not to mention the infiltration of Bernie Sanders' campaign by the DNC and the Clinton operatives. That was first announced by Nico House in North Carolina. And then when the WikiLeaks of the DNC emails came out just before the DNC in 2016, it revealed that that's in fact what they were doing. That was a conspiracy theory. That's what they were doing. They were sabotaging the Bernie campaign. One more poll here that ought to raise the hair on the back of supporters of Buttigieg or Biden or Bloomberg or Deval Patrick, who apparently is jumping into this race. We did a survey on Facebook, not just on our page. You can see it was shared here 432 times. We were very careful to avoid Bernie or bust pages, Bernie or bust groups. We went to Bernie groups and progressive groups and asked, if Bernie doesn't win the nomination, what will you do? Vote blue or not blue? And we define not blue as Bernie or bust. But that could be Bernie or Trumpers, write in Bernie Sanders, vote progressive third party, or stay home. We didn't define that. We asked them to define that in the comments. But look at this number, 64%. We realize this is not a scientific survey, but it ought to be, it's an indicator that this whole notion that people will not vote blue no matter who is much stronger and much more significant than it was last time around, or at least equal to last time around. And let's not forget what happened last time around. The Bernie or Trumpers alone were enough to defeat Hillary Clinton. These people right here were enough to defeat Hillary Clinton. So how is Bernie going to win? What's he bringing to the table that other people will not? This is a screen. There we go. This is the Bernie or Bust television on YouTube. Strongly recommend. I'll provide a link to that in the description below this video. Strongly encourage you to subscribe to this. This particular episode explains a study published in 2018 by Thomas Piketty, French political economist, who wrote and published The Capital in the 21st Century, an important book, and another one called Capital and Ideology. In 2018, he published a study of voters in the United States, England, and France over 70 years, looking at those kind of exit polling and post-election polling. And what he found is that poor people and poorly elected people won't vote at all. They're not Bernie or bust. They are, in a certain sense, progressive or bust. Unless there is a social democrat on the ballot, which is the European term for democratic socialist, they won't come out and vote at all. So that's going to be part of Bernie's coalition that he can use to defeat Donald Trump that no other Democrat is bringing to the table. And we don't talk about these poor and poorly educated people without mentioning Bernie's volunteer army of 1 million people. No other candidate has that. And Bernie has his own voter database that these volunteers are updating using Burn app. When they go door to door and they're canvassing on his behalf, they're updating the voter database. Who's your preferred candidate? Who's your second preferred candidate? So they can go back to them when their preferred candidate drops out, or in the case of Joe Biden, has an aneurysm and has to leave or whatever. only Bernie's going to bring these poor and poorly educated people back into the Democratic fold to vote for him, not to vote for Biden, not to vote for Booker or Bloomberg or Buttigieg or Warren, but to vote for Bernie Sanders. If he's not the Democratic Party nominee, these people that are explained in this Brahmin Left and Merchant Right article published by Piketty in 2018, and again, there's links he provides down here to all kinds of information, more Bernie Bust episodes, this understanding of the Brahmin Left and Merchant Right. You can click on these. There's also comparison of Trump and Sanders on a fascism scale. That's on our website. There's a lot of very powerful stuff here. Well, what we're trying to do when we talk about Bernie or Bust as a warning, it's not the Bernie or Busters that the Democrats really have to be worried about. It's the swing voters. People aren't talking about this on CNN or MSNBC, but there's a large enough portion of Bernie's supporters who will vote for Trump again next year if Bernie's not the nominee. Large enough that without Bernie or Bust at all, they will swing the election. That's why none of these other candidates can defeat Donald Trump. They just can't, because these swing voters, and we're trying to sound the alarm to progressive media, to Democrats everywhere, to help them understand if Bernie's not the nominee, it's over. It's over for the Democrats. I can guarantee you, I would bet a year's pay that Trump will be reelected if Bernie Sanders is not the nominee. And we showed you all the statistics, and you're going to see more and more of these statistics as time goes on. I'm sorry this took so long. Thank you for your attention. Thank you again. Bernie or Bust.
Revolt Against Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.